So we got a wheelbarrow for a project now. I mean, we just keep moving on and on and on, keeping ourselves busy. Whenever we have time off of work, we're not working. We're trying to find something new to restore. We noticed that somebody threw this old wheelbarrow out. Actually called us to haul it off to the scrapyard. And of course, I don't believe in throwing anything that could be reused away. So it can be recycled and sent back to us at triple the price from another country, melted down. So I'd rather keep what we have and see if we can restore it. So what do we have here? We have a Jackson brand commercial grade or contractor's grade. I think this is a 6 cubic yard wheelbarrow, and it's got the reason we know it's 6 cubic foot is because 7s and 8 cubic foot, 7 cubic foot and 8 cubic foot usually today come with dual wheels. I know in the older days they probably had a 7 cubic foot wheelbarrow, a little bit bigger, and it came with one wheel, but it was a bigger storage space. It was a bigger usable space, a bigger tub. We know the measurement here approximately across is about 25 inches. We know it's about 35 to 36 inches this way. That makes it about 6 cubic foot. So this is a standard older fashioned wheelbarrow because it's all steel. There's no plastic involved here. And that's appealing because today everything is made out of plastic and it's meant to just throw in the garbage and start over and buy another one, even if they cost $200 or $150.
The modern day equivalent of this from the same company is about $140, $150 depending on where you buy it from.
But the steel is a lot thinner.
It is. It's not an older, thicker steel.
And I'm assuming that this was made out of a different grade steel, and so we took all of our bolts off of it, and they throw them away because the handles get rotten. Most people don't know that you can go to Home Depot or Lowe's, or this was a Lowe's wheelbarrow, I believe, probably one of their first. You could buy the handles for $19 a piece. Sometimes you can get them cheaper than that, $35 for a pair of 2. And they're made out of a hardwood, something called cottonwood. Or they could be made out of oak or something else. Something equivalent to what a shovel handle is made out of. And I think it's just a dried hard wood. And it just really doesn't hold up to the elements very well unless it's sealed.
We're going to recondition this thing fully, not just with new handles, repainting it too.
Yeah, we're gonna not blast it. I think we're gonna wire wheel it down, and we're gonna throw some implement paint on it. And we're still deciding on colors. I could go with the original Lowe's blue, which looks like a Ford tractor blue, but I think we might actually go with something a little different.
stick around to the end, you'll find out.
Yeah, stick around to the end. Subscribe to the channel. None of our stuff is scripted. We find out. You find out when we find out. So we have no real rust on this bucket here.
Wire wheeled and de-rusted pretty easy.
Some of them have big holes in them and stuff like that, and they're really not good for much. But this one's pretty thick, and it has no dents in it, which tells me it's a thicker gauge metal than what they sell you today.
That's what the old handles were made out of.
Yeah, and so this is what's left of the old handles. For those of you who need a reference guide to what these handles are, we've taken a measurement before, and I think they are exactly 5 foot long based on what they sell today. And there's 2 different types of handle. One is a little bit weaker and skinnier for a lighter duty wheelbarrow, and one is a heavier duty grade. And your standard size diameter square, until it tapers to a handle at the end, is, I think, roughly 2 inches or slightly down from there. So
1 inch and 7/8 maybe.
About 1 inch and 7/8 square. So square to square, 1 7/8. We are keeping this intact as much as possible as a guide reference right here. Because any handle that we buy or make, we're going to have to drill our own holes. We're not lucky enough to get a full length handle to see where the wheel is in relation to the bucket, but we'll do our best to find out based on other models if we can find one. Maybe we can go off of, get a rough estimate that a bolt was going through here at one time, and this might be where it starts.
I think that since they're all set lengths, we wouldn't have much of a problem fitting.
Oh, I don't know.
I mean, as long as we know that that bolt to this bolt is a certain fixed length, and then we mimic that with the other side, and that attaches to this point right here.
Yeah, that's
on
just
the bottom.
That's just a bracket brace. But the problem comes in where this bracket brace, of course, when it was dilapidated and pulled apart, it was bent.
Oh, I see.
So we can straighten that out pretty easy and paint these brackets, sand them down real quick, wire wheel them down to the metal, paint them with an implement paint with a hardener in them, and we can come up with a color scheme. This bottom bracket brace piece is not in bad shape.
No, it's not.
It's Jackson
Yep, Jackson.
brand,
Yep.
and it looks like it just clipped in one side and screwed in another. You know, this might not be that old of a wheelbarrow, but it'll be a free one to paint it to our liking and be able to be used around the yard.
Leftover supplies that otherwise would just rot away in the weather.
Well, either that or we ship it overseas, like I said, and they sell it back to us for triple or quadruple the price,
Other people might have
and
these supplies lying
and
around.
a cheaper form.
Right.
You know, Russia made the best steel besides the United States at one time. And now we don't hardly do any steel production. Russia still does steel production, but we got some kind of conflict always. And now we get our steel from China. And some of that comes to the point where you can't even hardly weld some of it because there's so much junk mixed in it that you can't tell what's what, and you don't know what welding rod to even use on it. Yeah, what size is it? 8 by
4.8 by 4 by 8.
Yeah, okay, so 8 is the diameter of the rim. What, 4 is the thickness? It's thin.
Yeah.
Got it. So it's got a tube in it. We could put some air in it and find out if it holds air. If not, otherwise the tire would hold up for a wheelbarrow tire, even with a little dry rot on it, as long as it has a tube in it.
Right.
All right, good enough. Look at this, it just comes right apart on me. Oh, that's because that
Right.
studded in there.
We need to keep it like that so we can get a good measurement. We got to mimic that on both sides.
Gotcha. No problem. All right, so we didn't really waste any time. Looks like we got all our parts off here. Pile right there. Tire. As you can see, it's a wheel with just a bushing. It needs a little grease on the axle. Rim needs to be cleaned up and painted. And let me show you one of my secrets. This is what I use to prep the paint. This is Zepp Industrial Purple Degreaser. It's not the same as Purple Power from the dollar store. This is much stronger. In fact, it's very corrosive to aluminum. So use that with caution around aluminum. Don't let it sit on aluminum for any length of time. But steel works great. So what I do is I prep, like you can see on the grinding wheel here. See the grinding wheel on this big old outdated DA grinder. We have a really harsh wire wheel, so we're going at this rough metal. And we got a little paint left over here.
Still, yeah.
So we're going to do this whole thing over, front, inside, and the back side, the bottom side. And we decided to go with red, white, and yellow, which is all international harvester colors. So we're going to go red bucket, red hard parts, IH white, which is an off-white, so sort of a cream colored rim dish, and we're going to go with yellow handles. And all of this is Implement Tractor Supply paint. I'm promoting no companies. I don't get paid to do that. our projects, this is what we do. But I've been doing this for more than 20 years. I've been using this as a prep to paint because it cleans off light surface rust. So after this is ground down pretty good, and then we go after the hard parts with a lighter, softer wheel that's more of a cone shaped, and we go after these parts because this is a little bit too abrasive. The wheel on here is a little bit too abrasive for these lighter parts. So when we get to the lighter parts, we're going to use a cone wire wheel them all down, set all this up. By tomorrow in the daylight we should have a medium to low humidity. All these parts will be washed with a brush and this stuff, and it won't be left on there to dry. It'll be on there long enough. Spray it on there dry without the metal being wet first. It'll eat at the remaining surface rust and then give us a fully degreased surface to paint on without the paint peeling, as long as this is washed off thoroughly and then it's dried. And after that we should have no problems. We were originally going to try to restore John Deere's name and do this thing John Deere.
Green and yellow.
Paint the rim John Deere yellow, paint the bucket green, paint the hard parts green, and
handle yellow, I guess, also.
Yeah, maybe paint the handles yellow and have put a big John Deere sticker where Jackson was. But I don't think we're going to revive John Deere's name right now because we don't have the paint to do that on hand. We're just doing this with the stuff that we have in the garage, and since we have an international harvester, an international cub, we have the paint for that. So that's what we're going to do. So let's get to going. Starting with the rim first, it's the easy part. Obviously we just cleaned it with a degreaser. There was some parts that needed to be sanded lightly. The idea is not to take too much paint off if you don't have to. And the purpose behind that is to keep its protected layer. Some people think you need to strip parts like this down to the metal. It's just simply not necessary, especially if you're going to just do a quick restoration of something that needs to be painted. Some people may want to make a template. I don't find that necessary. I say just deflate the tire on the rim and shove the tape underneath the rim, behind the tire, between the tire and the rim, under the bead like that, and just push it down in there, and that should give you what you're looking for. And then cover it up like this. It goes a lot faster than it looks. I'm sure there are other ways to do this, but this is the easiest for me. It's made cheaper, I don't know. Alright. So you heat this. There you go, cameraman. You see that? A circle. Keep it hot. Nozzle on this can is not the best. It's been used and hasn't been blown out. Okay, rattle can tack coat. Blow dry.
From a high distance.
Oh, I could do so much better of a job if I didn't have the top stopping up on me. Alright, so we just painted. Paint's not dry yet. Another thing you might want to know, little secret, take your tape off before it's dry. Go ahead.
Finished drying the rest of the way now.
Why?
So that way it doesn't bond the whole duct tape on?
No. So that your tape doesn't. And I got one little piece we didn't catch right there. We got a little overspray. A little Xylene and a rag will wipe that off.
Yeah.
So what's the point of that? The point of taking the tape off before it's dry is so that you don't actually take the tape off and rip a paint line and start your paint ripping midway through the drying process.
Oh, okay.
Or you don't leave what's called a rough edge on the paint job. Like a paint line that's real rough. The paint's still relatively soft, so it will feather itself in.
Got it.
Understand?
Yeah, it'll level itself.
Right. And that's the idea of taking paint off before paint is dry. Tape off, I mean. Change of plans. We went with the IH white. For some reason, the rattle can decided to spit out a little bit of pink. That's not the natural color of IH white.
I don't know if this camera's picking it up, but from the human eye, it is a little bit of pink.
Well, last night I thought it was the LEDs, and LEDs throw off a false reality in color because they're from a blue light spectrum. But this is not from the light bulb. This is natural sunlight, and it is pink, and it will not dry no matter how long it sits in the sun to its natural cream colored white. So with all that said, what we're going to do is we're going to paint these red and we're going to switch the color scheme. Red.
It's already been painted once, so it should go on pretty well, huh?
Yeah, just a light coat of red over this. And after we do some red, IH red, then we're going to paint the body. We figure red is a little bit too much of a feminine color, and don't take this the wrong way or offended people. But it's a little bit too much of a non-industrial color. So we're going to paint this IH yellow, which is a construction grade color. And so we're going to paint all this yellow, and there's the main body. As you can see, it's being sun dried. And
that's after 2 coats of power clean?
Not power clean.
Sorry, Zep.
Zep.
Not power clean, Zep.
Yeah, power clean doesn't have the power to take some of this rust off.
Took it down to the bare steel, some of it.
Most of it's to the bare steel. The little bit of rust that's left, the surface rust, will get painted over and edged in pretty well. I've used implement paint before, and it's meant to be painted over tractors and stuff that have been sitting in the field for years. So we're going to find out how this comes out. But anyway, this is the prep work, and we got to let it dry out a little bit more in the sun with natural sunlight hitting it. If we wanted to artificially dry it, we could heat it, but
it's a big surface.
Yeah, we have the day. We're going to paint this outdoors just like this, and we're going to let gnats, flies, whatever land on it, and then those will rub off after the fact. One thing in paint, your first reaction when you paint something and you get a bug stuck to it, the first thing you want to do is remove it while the paint's wet. Don't leave it. Deal with it afterward. All right.
A buffing machine?
Yeah, I mean, that's generally for automotive. What you do is lightly sand that spot and then you buff it in. But if a big old fly or a bee or something lands in it and it starts tossing and turning and interrupting the paint, that's a different story. Even that still could be handled after it's dried with some, 1000 grit. And we're not going to focus that much on that because this is an industrial job, and this is just to have a functioning wheelbarrow that's restored back to factory condition and or better. We're going to put a little bit thicker paint than what the factory used, and we're going to use implement paint that's probably stronger than what they put on, thicker. Okay. Alright, so we're waiting on paint to dry. That's unfortunately the worst part about doing a project, is waiting for paint to dry. So, suggestion, don't wait for the paint to dry. find something else to do. Obviously, we left this in one piece, bolted together tight. We sprayed it. We sprayed it once. We sprayed it twice. Gnats came and attacked it. Gnats came and attacked the bucket on the underside, and they also attacked the front side of it. So what did we do? We waited for it to dry a little bit. We have a hardener mixed in the paint. We took a paintbrush, dry bristle brush, very light, and we knocked the gnats off. Now the gnats are off. We took it underneath the carport and we stuck a fan going and we painted it again. And then we turned the fan on right after. And so now it's set to dry where it sits until it's done. And it's not the best paint job in the world, but for being outdoors and painting outdoors like this is what you get.
It's a DeWalt yellow almost.
Well, it's IH yellow, so DeWalt stole it from International.
Yeah.
So this is International Harvester yellow, and we figured this color because it's the most industrial out of all colors, and we don't want to be running around with a pink wheelbarrow or a red, bright fire engine red wheelbarrow. Rather have an industrial tractor color, and that's just my personal preference. You can paint yours red, white, and blue, or pink, yellow, and green. Doesn't matter. The point is that if I were doing this with a brush, I would probably use implement paint on a brush in the belly itself, and then maybe in some of the exterior. And I'd buy the same can of spray paint, implement spray paint, in the same brand, the same exact color, and I would shake that well, and I would probably paint the brackets and all the small parts with the spray can, and I would save the big brush job for the tub like this, and then I would probably spray some of my paint, my aerosol paint, over it so that it could self-level and wouldn't have a rough texture finish from a brush while it's trying to self-level. So in other words, I would help it self-level by spraying it again before it's dry with spray paint. Fortunately, I had a automotive paint gun, and that's what I used to paint this with, and a compressor.
Pancake compressor.
Yeah, we used a pancake compressor, which doesn't have enough air volume to keep up with the gun, but it did enough for these small parts, and so that's where we are. And
what about our wheel right there?
We're going to repaint that. That is what this color was supposed to be, and this is what happens when you don't shake a rattle can enough or the rattle can goes bad. You get a pink color. So we're going to repaint it with a gun, a smaller gun, and we're going to paint it white, the IH Harvester white. So the wheel's red, rim's red now. That's an IH red. After a clogged paint gun.
Several times.
Yep. Next time, anybody, or first time anybody ever paints, make sure you use a paint filter to filter out your old paints. Otherwise you'll get a clog in the bottom of your spray gun if you're using one, and you'll regret it. So that's done, and we've decided, and we're only 24 hours into this, by the way. Somehow we managed to flip these over half dry and work with this way. And cardboard and things like that we used, and we had the hardware up there painted already. And even though this is just a silly wheelbarrow and a replacement, I guess handle replacements, instead of carving out our own handles like we were going to do, I think we're just going to buy 2 handles, even though that it's a rip-off price. And what we're going to do to stop them from rotting in the future is take them and paint them with an implement paint.
Seal them.
After we wipe them down with wash thinner or xylene.
Got it.
So that we make the top coat tacky, which is probably like a urethane.
Yeah.
We'll wipe the urethane down and then paint them, especially after we drill the holes in them, because that's where they rot, where the holes are drilled.
Oh yeah.
We pre-drill the holes and then soak the inside of the holes with extra thin IH white and implement paint white, the whole handle. So we paint the entire wooden handle white, even the grip where you grab it.
That's a good idea. That'll seal it in.
Well,
Especially where we drill it.
it'll stop the weather from withering it away. Like,
And this will stop rust.
well, yeah, sure it will. The inside is already ready to, when it's all done and it's put together and everything's together, the final step is to flip it back upside down, have it ready to go, set it on the concrete, and paint the inside one more thick coat. You agree?
Yes.
Brush the bugs off with a dry brush, which most of them we already got off, and it looks fine. But just because that's the load section, the traffic, the high traffic section,
It's going to need the extra coat.
so paint it with one extra coat while it's still clean, and the paint will still take it'll still take a paint job.
Right. Right. And then we let this thing sit for about a week, because that's how long this kind of paint kind of takes to...
At least a week.
Yes. Even sprayed, even thinned, even hardened, it still takes a week.
Preferably, probably let it sit in the sun and bake.
Yeah.
And then it'll be stronger than it came from the store.
Very
And
strong.
we just made a spectacle out of a wheelbarrow. I mean, you got people on YouTube posting how to play video games and how to, well, I'll say that. Some of y'all do some of that, but we got things that are the goofiest things in the world on how to do on the internet, so why not a wheelbarrow? So we got some handles. Obviously was not worth it buying $40 handles for a $250 to a $175 to a $250 wheelbarrow. However, paying $19 a handle beats trying to make them ourselves, especially when they're made out of hardwood. So what can we do to make them a little bit more weatherproof? Well, first things first, the holes are not drilled. We barely have a template to go off of. The only thing we really have is where the front nose mounts to where the wheel mounts, but we don't have where the belly mounts, because that's pretty much rotted off. We also discovered upon looking at this that either it rotted off over time, or someone assembled this wheelbarrow in the wrong way, because they're supposed to be risers. Risers are, obviously they take a longer screw, which I think is a 5.5 inch bolt like this, and this is about 5.5 inches. So that tells me that once upon a time there was a riser on here, which is a wedge shaped piece of wood that rises up here and then gets narrow to the last bolt here. So the riser would stop here and then sit flush against the belly of the wheelbarrow. So the riser would rise up about an inch, inch and a half, maybe 2 inches, depending on the belly height, whether you want it to sit level. Apparently this one had a riser, going by pictures only. If you look at the wooden handles that they sell you, I noticed that the riser from the pictures from the other ones like this model assembled, or newer versions of it, have a riser on it with a rolled steel belly like this one that rose up about almost as much as this, so at least an inch and a half, and then it slimmed down and tapered down to nothing, which tells me that I need to measure from here to here and cut me two identical risers where it raises up an inch and a half at least here and then tapers down here to accommodate this long bolt which comes through. Also, I've noticed that there were gaskets at one point in time in the past that was supposed to be assembled with this that went on here that they put on the back side here. Obviously that was to smash against the wood riser and stop water, cement, concrete, whatever you mixing in here, or whatever you use, dirt, dirty water, from dripping through the other side onto your wood and rotting your wood. So we're going to have to improvise and get some kind of rubber grommet, which we can have no problem digging around and finding a rubber grommet. This wood was called cottonwood. Cottonwood is from obviously some kind of cottonwood tree or something like that. It's in a family of 3 different types of hardwoods. Oak is one of those woods. So we do have oak. So we will wind up using our oak after all to make our risers. So as I said, we'll start high here and then taper down and make it look uniform on the belly. And we also notice that we're missing some metal cross braces that after the handles are put on and the frame is, before the frame is bolted on, they go under. It's flat bar steel that goes across that supports it from racking this way and that way. So they go across this way.
That wasn't even on this.
That wasn't even on this particular wheelbarrow assembled. So someone took some shortcuts possibly and assembled this out of the box without it correctly being assembled. So we don't have those pieces of steel, but we do have flat bar, flat aluminum, and other types of various flat steel that we can make those cross braces with. So we got to drill all our holes first, like I said, and after we drill all our holes, then we can paint these with an implement paint after we wipe them down with some xylene, which is something that's used to, you know, strip varnish and paint, stuff like that, and help as a degreaser. So we're going to strip these, wipe them down, get them tacky with xylene after we drill the holes, then paint them, and then we'll paint the insides of the holes so that they're treated against weather. On my face. So it looks like 7 and 10 is your axle holes. For your axle holes from the end of the board. So you've already drilled your side holes. I drilled them already. And so 7 and 10, I'm sorry, 7 and a half and 10 looks like it's going to be your axle holes. Axle shaft, hold your axle shaft in place. So 7 and a half inches and 10.
That's based on the other template you have here.
Right, but we'll check that and make sure that those holes are far enough apart, because this is what we had before. 2 holes. We were able to kind of manipulate where they go, get a rough estimate about where they're marked at, and as long as the 2 are the same, you won't notice the difference if it's off 1/8 of an inch.
These holes we marked by putting that front plate on.
Right.
Kind of putting it to the end.
But I like my front plate to sit tight.
Right.
Every wheelbarrow I've ever ran across always has a jiggling front plate that isn't on there as tight as it can be, meaning pushed all the way up against the cap and tightened.
Got it.
Understand? So
we're making it taut.
yes. On this side, this is 1 3/4 inches. Then when you turn it this way, it's 2 inches.
Right.
And these are the new standard handles that they sell you. So obviously, you're either going to put them on like this, sideways, or you're going to put them on long ways, and that's for strength. But when you're drilling a hole down the center of them, over here, particularly the back handle hole, is where it snaps when you pull up on it.
Right.
So do you have enough to drill through and still have side meat to hold for strength?
I guess you would want to drill as small of a hole as possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
For a 5/16, and we're drilling slightly bigger than 5/16 to accommodate the bolt going through there, and plenty of stuff to get in the hole. So let's stay there for a minute. Let's check this and make sure. Here's one of the wheel brackets. Let's see if our holes line up, right? For a 5/16 to go through. And it looks like our holes kind of line up. Right?
Kind of. Oh yeah, if you center both of them.
If I center them both, then they line up, correct?
Right.
So what do you think the best option is? Set this center and draw an oval, right?
Probably, yeah. And then from there, you drill in the center of that oval.
Use your best judgment, because these are adjustable.
Yeah, if you get any of these measurements off, you'd have one handle forward versus the other.
Correct.
Have a dog walking, single-wheeled.
Alright, so
Wheelbarrow.
Obviously, these handles will be like that, and you can't have your plate like that, right?
True.
Because your axle, so you're going to be twisted ever so slightly like that. And that's what these slot adjustments are for. So that your axle is straight when you're V'd out like that, and you got a front nose piece. Alright, so something in that realm. Make sense?
Yeah.
So you got your second one on there. And that's what you're going to do again. So, like I said, your rough end, or your rough guesstimate, is right around 7.5 to 10. And so we're going to draw our ovals, and we'll go somewhere in the center of those. We have to show you the 24-hour mark, and this is in between working and doing other things. You know, this is just a side project for fun. So we have the whole international scheme here. All the parts, those will get touched up after they're put on. We got 2 cross braces that we talked about earlier that were missing. We got the wedges that were made to angle the handles at the right pitch, to push the bucket up taller. What were they called again?
Risers?
Risers, there you go. So we made the risers out of oak beams, and they're painted international white. We wiped the handles down with xylene, and they soaked that paint right up, made it nice and tacky, so we could the paint would stick to it. We painted them with like 3 or 4 coats of international paint. So looks like we got the whole scheme here. So by tomorrow when we get off of work, we should be able to slap this thing together. We're going to turn this fan off tonight, call it a night, slap this thing together, and then that will be the final product.
Yeah.
How about if we bring it over to the customer that we removed it when we were picking up all that debris,
Get back to them?
and just give it to them? We only got $40 invested in it.
That'd be a surprise on their face. I'd like to see a look on their face when they see this.
Okay, well, we'll put it together and see how good it looks, how it operates, if it's presentable, and if it is, we'll think about doing that. Alright, so here we are on day 2. Next day.
The almost finished product.
Yeah, we just kind of threw it together to see how it would line up. And so the only thing we have left to do now is put the axle on and the front support brackets. You can see we made these brackets last night real quick, and paint didn't even have time to fully dry. If I had to do it over again, or if I took shortcuts, it was not cutting these brackets flush, grinding them down flush, and then the front's pretty good, so there's no snags there. So that's the only drawback there, and that's because I got in a rush. And like I said, I took these off the back of an old rotten dolly. Those were the cross braces in the back of the old dolly. So we got those support braces, and you can see our bolts, our 5.5-inch bolts up front, accommodated for the thickness of the riser that we chose. We actually went with 1 3/4 inches right here at the top riser.
Tapering down to nothing.
Tapering down to 0. And we did that, first we marked out 1.5 inches, and it looked a little shallow to me, so I went with 1 3/4 inches. And then when I tapered down, I noticed that I guess our saw blade maybe took a little bit less than that off, so maybe a little less than 1 3/4 inches for a riser. But our studs came up about equal for our bolts, so that tells me that they accommodated the right bolts from the factory, and that there were risers missing from this piece of equipment, and there were also these flat bars that were probably never installed.
Yeah.
From someone else's doing, or maybe this was before they were able to do that.
Yeah, because of how the bolt went through, you would never lose that piece, even if the wood rotted off.
Right, even if the wood rotted. And these were all attached. If y'all don't remember in the beginning of the video, we had to, well, you didn't see that part, but we had to undo all the bolts. But we didn't have any flat brackets to grind down and clean up and paint. So
You had to make that.
yeah, no big deal. I mean, it's just a flat bar, roughly a 16th inch thick.
Not bad for custom-made parts.
Well, just that and just those pieces, but nothing else is really custom made actually.
No, not
It's
even
ju-
the handles.
It's just a restoration, and we're gonna see how long it lasts. Of course, I can't post that on a video for me. Maybe I can come back in 3 years and say, hey, look, unless we give it to someone else, like we said earlier. But we're gonna put it all together. The paint's still, it's dry, but it's not usable dry.
Cured.
It's not cured, but you can handle it. So I'm still leery about it. So there's the axle through the housing, and we'll put a little grease on that later, and then slide it through, and then bolt it together. And so you can see all our bolt holes lined up for the most part. There, and we took a chance here because we didn't have a reference from here to here to see what that reference. We didn't know what that was going to be.
What do we put that at? 19?
We put this at
Or 18 3/4?
19 from the end of the post.
Got
So
it.
your first belly hole goes from the end of the post to 19 inches, and then we went from there to here. Of course, measured center hole to center hole to make the belly bolt holes.
Right.
We never at any time put the wood up to the belly and drew a circle. So this is our own, and we free-handed drilled this, so we did not actually
Use a drill press.
use a drill press. So our drill could have been off at a slight angle, and we don't know if it was off. But generally, if you hold still, a person with a good eye can look down at least 3 sides of the drill and tell that they're going straight. So we took that chance free-handed, and it looks like we turned out, if those 4 belly holes lined up like that, and then we put O-rings on the back sides of them to stop water from leaking through the belly. Those 4 bolts lined up in the pan, that was a pretty successful drill, even if one of them's a little on the cockeyed side or whatever. So far I haven't seen that. And then if I had to do it again, the risers would probably be a little neater looking, instead of just where you can see an oak knot there and things like that. But I don't, when's the last time we had a wheelbarrow show?
Wheelbarrow piano.
Yeah, we're not building a piano here, we're building something to work with. But anyway, here we go. We have the first mock international scheme colored wheelbarrow.
Only thing it's missing is like you said, an IH sticker right there.
They actually would go on the side right here.
Oh, yeah, right.
One on each side.
And if this was black and yellow, it would be the wall instead.
Yeah, you're not going to show up on a job site with something like that.
No, somebody would walk off with it.
Yeah, unfortunately.
One more clip of the whole thing. sitting in the
Yeah,
sun.
one more clip of the whole thing, and then that's the final thing, and you can finally get away from this video. Thank y'all for watching. So let's see if it sits level. I know we're on unlevel ground, but let's keep going right here. Yeah, the belly sits level. The gnats love it. The gnats and flies love this fresh paint smell.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah, don't mind the fact that one handle looks higher than the other. I think it's because it's on uneven ground.
it is on a slope. It doesn't feel that way when you pick it up. In fact, when you look at it, it's not. So there's going to need to be some touch-up painting here and there. You tighten some bolts here and there. But for the most part,
It is a finished project.
it is a finished project, and it is a wheelbarrow, so it's not that special. But if it dries and it gets nice and hard, it'll be good for use
Yeah.
for a long time.
I mean, if somebody's
A lot of people leave these out in the yard, and the handles get soaked with water.
right,
That's the problem. They rot. The handles rot. They go to pick it up one day, and snap goes one handle every single time.
right.
Now, I know they've solved that with some
steel handles.
steel handles or alloy steel, but they bend those alloy steel handles and then they bend them back and then they break.
Right, because once they bend once, they're done.
Right, and you try to bend it back, it's weaker than it was ever before. And there's a certain amount of flex and feel to a authentic wooden handle on a wheelbarrow. If you grew up with one, there's an authentic feel to it. So I decided to do that because this is not really that heavy of a duty wheelbarrow. It's pretty light duty, pretty standard. For 1980, this is standard. This is what everybody used in the 1980s.
Now nowadays they're lighter duty than this.
Nowadays they want to sell you all these special features and stuff, and they have these wheelbarrows. You can add a second wheel on and all kinds of stuff.
I know most of them don't have the rolled steel anymore
No.
on the sides.
So we'll touch up where it was sitting here and there and these areas after this paint starts to cure a little bit. It's not a big concern. But the most part, it is all one color. It is not rusty, and most of all, it is functional. And that's the most important part. Can we use it? Can someone else use it? Yes.